Hey guys, Miss Leone here, and today I'm going to be demonstrating drawing objects from basic forms part 2. So to complete this assignment, you must do part 1 and 2. So this is how you do part 2. So make sure you've seen the other one in order to complete the assignment if you missed it in class. Alright, so what we're doing here is we're pretty much building on what we've done in part 1 and combining steps of drawing different forms to create actual objects. Okay, so let's start by labeling our paper, drawing objects from basic forms, and this is part 2. Now if you have room on your paper from part 1 that we did in class, feel free to add it to the bottom, that's no problem. But for demonstrating purposes, I'm going to draw them bigger on this paper all by itself. That way you can really see it if you missed it during class. Alright, so the first object we're going to be drawing is a barrel. Okay, and that's going to be starting by just basically making a cylinder, adding a sphere, and then just little details, a little shading, and it's going to be an object. So let's go. So we are starting with an ellipse, right, an oval. And we're trying to make it even on all the sides, okay? So if you see like one side's a little fatter than the other, maybe we want to slim it down, like I'm doing right here. I'm going to go in and erase. So the materials you need for this are a pencil and paper, and that's it. From there, I'm going to be making, so I'm sketching lightly though, I'm going to be making 2 vertical lines, because now I'm making a cylinder, so I'm going to be making 2 vertical lines, make sure they're straight, sketching lightly, okay, about there. That's about the proportion that we want to go for, and then we're going to curve to match the curve on the top, okay? Make sure it's not flat. So now that we have that, now we're just going to keep adding to it. So now we're going to be adding a circle, which is going to turn into more of a sphere in order to get this like rounded shape. So we're going to go in and I'm going to round it right here. Because I'm leaving a little of the edge. Notice how I'm leaving some of the bottom of the cylinder showing, right? Because that's going to be the bottom of the barrel. It's going to be almost like a circle, okay? So again, lightly. This might extend a little over the top, but I am sketching lightly so I can erase it, okay? So I love this because it really shows how just combining simple forms, every single object that we draw can be broken down into simple basic form. And that's the whole point of learning how to draw forms, is that once you master drawing these, you can draw anything. So I have this like rounded, almost like a circle, almost a perfect circle, because this is going to be the edges of my barrel. So the next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to start to erase any extra stuff that I have here. So this line and the cylinder, the vertical lines of the cylinder are now going away. So this is why it's good that we sketch lightly. They'll erase, no problem. And as I'm just making sure, so if you have any crumbs under your paper, make sure you fix that. So now looking at it, now I can kind of tell, I want to make sure that my edges, right, the sides of my barrel are going to be the same. So I'm really going to look, if I have to fine tune anything, I can at this point. I feel like maybe this should be a little slimmer on this side. And then it kind of just pops a little more. So you can see my lines got a little thick there. I'm just going to go in there and use this. I like this eraser better. It's a little more. Make sure when you're erasing with a pencil that you actually have eraser left, because if you scrape it with the metal, you're going to scratch your paper. And then I'm also going to erase these little lines inside the neck. So we kind of have a lantern vibe here. Until we put details, it kind of reminds me of like a lantern. Okay. And then I'm going to go in and just finish adding that. Alright, so now looking at it, I feel like this side, now that I've adjusted that side, I feel like this side can get a little wider. So it's a constant kind of, eyeing it to the best of your ability. Okay, so let me just clean that up. And it's okay, and I like that I'm showing you guys my process, my erasing, okay? Erasing is part of the process, fixing, editing. And the fact that if you're able to notice that it's off and can fix it, then I feel like I've done my job. All right, so now we have that. So now we're gonna go in and start to add more details to this barrel. So now I'm gonna go in and start to, in the center, I'm gonna add a curving line that complements the curve of the form that I just drew. This is going to be one of those, the metal that wraps around a barrel. I'm going to put one up here. It's going to be 3 of them all together. So I want them to curve. So just like in the first part of the assignment, part 1 of the same assignment, the way that when we drew the sphere and we drew those lines going around and they had to be parallel to each other, same thing here, okay? And then I'm going to add one more up here, and this has to do with the neck. Alright, so now let's work on, before we continue with the bottom, let's work on this, because we're going to be erasing just a little bit to create this opening on the rim of the barrel. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to be adding an edge to make my oval a little smaller. Okay, and on this side I'm going to curve it. I'm going to leave a little space here and I'll be erasing. And maybe I'll want to fix this edge a little if I see that it was a little too flat. So this is where sometimes when we draw we don't notice that things are off until we start to do another part of it, and then we realize, okay, let me fix that. So now here I'm just going to quickly erase these lines. Okay, this original line that I made, I'm just gonna, since I made it a little rounder, I'm just gonna adjust that. And if I have to add, if I erase a little too much, you can just redraw it, no problem. Alright, so which I'm gonna have to. I'm just gonna redraw that curve, redraw that curve. I want to just make it nice and smooth. So now we have an opening. Alright. And you can see there's no marks here, I erased them. So now we're gonna start to make these more three-dimensional. So I'm making it bulge a little right on the outside where this curve is. Okay, and I'm making a parallel curve close together though. I'm going to do it again here. Because again, this is going to become the metal that holds the barrel together. And one more down here. So it's going to become kind of three-dimensional off the edge. Once I have that done, I can just kind of go ahead and shade gently. Really gently. And then I can just clean up any extra marks that I made. I'm going to kind of angle my page a little, that way I can just, there we go. Sometimes you got to angle your paper in order to make things a little crisp and solid, because depending on the position that you're drawing in and the position of the angle of the line you're drawing, you might have to move your hand around. Same thing here, I'm going to shade in. Maybe for this one I'm only going to kind of shade the bottom of it. Kind of leave a little dimension happening there, that's an option. In the next assignment though, we will be specifically focusing on drawing using a light source, highlight specific shadows, many values from the value scale. For this one we're just adding suggestions of value, just to give it a sense of realism. Okay, so we're going to do that. And then I'm just going to kind of make these little edges a little more defined in case they weren't, since we did sketch light in the beginning. Okay, so now we're missing are vertical but curving, slightly curving lines, because these are going to be the wood slabs. So this is also similar to the second sphere that we did with the vertical curving lines. So we're going to be adding that. So on one side it's going to curve, and it could be very light and thin. It's going to curve that way. Maybe I'll make it a little darker just for you guys to see it better in the video. And see, so this one curves the opposite. Notice how one is curving out that way, right, out to the left, and the other one's curving out to the right, and we're going to make another one on each side. Maybe I'm going to lift a little bit, leave a little space between the lines, and some of them more of an implied line versus an actual line being very solid, implied being almost a little more sketchier. Okay, and then I'm going to add another one here, and then one more here. So now you can see we have a wooden barrel looking form here. Okay, so our final step is we're just going to add a little bit of actual value just to create a suggestion of it being three-dimensional. So this is our first time shading in an object that technically, if this is open, you can technically put something in there. Okay, so we're going to be shading only one side, the inside, just one of them. Okay, very gently, just using a little hatching, so it gives it a sense of the light. So this would be with the light coming this way. The light wouldn't hit this back end, but it would hit this end because this is facing it. And then here I'm just going to reposition myself, and I'm just going to add shading. I'm just going to do some hatching to the right side of the barrel just to give it more of an illusion of three-dimension. Because just drawing something, you know, it'll look like an object, yeah, but if you don't add a little suggestion of value, like a shadow, highlights, shadows, okay, and you can see there, maybe I'll add a little right there. So you can see there that now we have a barrel, there's a highlight, there's a shadow, okay, parallel, so we have a lot of parallel things happening here, right, the vertical coming up and down, right, one facing one way, one facing the other, and then the horizontal curving, okay, but everything is kind of harmonious with each other in parallel. All right, so that's the first object. The second object is going to be, reminds me of like a yogurt cup or like a fruit cup, like school lunch kind of thing. So the way we're going to start that, we're going to go right to the center area. I'm going to make a rectangular prism. So again, I'm sketching lightly until I know, and actually looking at that, again, I started a little slanted, and I think that had to do with my paper was slanted, so even though I felt like it was straight, since my paper was slanted, it wasn't, right? So I'm going to making sure that your paper is straight. We're going to make, there we go, a horizontal, vertical line coming down, okay, and then I'm going to make my angle. Okay, so for this yogurt cup, it's kind of like a rectangular prism that ends up rounded, so it's kind of like a fusion. Just making sure that these two are parallel to each other, okay, and then these two on this side, they're going to just be a little shorter, because it's rectangular. We don't want it to be a cube, so one side should be a little shorter, but yet it is still parallel to each other, okay? And then we're going to just make our straight vertical line, so making sure that your paper is indeed straight when you're doing this, or it will end up slanted. And the same thing here, so you can see that one side is a little wider than the other. And notice how this line was a little longer down here. I'm just going to erase that, anything extra, okay? Oops. Oh, I had it good and I just added that for no reason. Okay, all is well. So now I'm going to make this opposite side, right? So again, just like we did in assignment 1, part 1 of this, I'm going to be making my diagonal line that is parallel. And you'll know when we start, once we finish this step, we can double check to make sure that it is indeed parallel. Okay. So now that I'm looking at it, it looks a little too high, the angle, so I'm just going to adjust it because I want it to be very parallel to the opposite. You can see here. So then I can go in and just kind of erase what I don't need there, anything extra. Same thing here. And then I'm just going to kind of solidify it just a drop. We're not doing too much erasing. We will be rounding corners, so I don't want to make it that bold, but just sharp, okay, and crisp. Okay, now the next step is we're going to be making a frame around the top of this. So now we have our rectangular prism. We're going to be making a frame. So just like in the first activity where we did the frame at the top of the cubes, we're going to be making a frame around it instead of inside. So let's go ahead and do that. And it's going to be parallel again. And we want it to kind of be the same distance. So if some lines are longer, that's okay, you can fix it. So that one I'm definitely going to be erasing a little bit. Okay, here. Maybe a little longer, just a drop. We can always erase anything extra. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, and then here. So if you notice that these lines should be parallel. If you see one side looks fatter or it's angled and sloping, you have to fix it. But that's actually not bad, all right. So now from here, we're just going to be erasing any little extra marks that we've made. So this, over here, and even inside, where this new shape we made is overlapping, I'm going to be erasing that part of the rectangular prism so we don't see those lines, and by erasing it, it becomes a plane on its own. A plane meaning like a flat surface. So this is a separate piece here now. Okay. So once we have that done, the final thing is to round the edges. So this is where this rectangular prism is going to get slightly similar to a cylinder, but rectangular. So anything that we draw can be broken down into basic forms, so you just have to alter them. So start with the most basic form that you notice, and then alter them as you need to. So here, I'm going to just tilt my page a little. I'm going to round it here a little bit. This back edge, I'm rounding it gently. Okay. Kind of like when we did, if you remember back when we did the hand texture assignment, part 1, we rounded when we made the bricks. Yes, at first we made rows, but then we rounded each brick. So I'm rounding this. There's his neck. His belly pops out from here. Right? He has his little belly. And then from here, it extends his little back, but then his little thigh kind of starts there. Okay? And then here, his little thigh kind of pops up from there. So now we just made him a little more plump and a little more chubby. And maybe I'm going to make, yep, there we go. All right. So now at this point we can start erasing certain areas. We're going to leave that there. That can be like the t-shirt. I'm going to get rid of this line here because this is becoming his thigh. I'm going to erase kind of where his little foot was slimmer. Okay, and I'm gonna adjust his foot. I'm gonna make this part of his foot a little bigger, and this one too, just to kind of exaggerate his little paw at the bottom. So it's all about just altering, starting with basic forms and just combining and altering as needed. And then just defining certain little spots, solidifying them a little. All right, so now the final step is we're going to actually add his little crop top, right? He's wearing a little t-shirt. Add his little crop top, so I'm going to make the sleeve go this way, so I can go ahead and just get rid of that little vertical line I had there from the original cylinder. Okay, I'm going to make the bottom of his shirt around there. I'm going to make the other sleeve curving. Okay, and then I can make his little belly, just kind of crisp it up a little. Before I get to his face, I'm just going to add a little more shading here, just to kind of really solidify, but I'm just using some hatching lines here. It's all good. And we can add some shading at the bottom, his little leg, his little thigh here. We can do a little cross hatching if we want to certain spots. Add a little shading here. Same thing, add a little shading to the bottom of this one. Give it the illusion. Okay, some shading down here. Darken this. So that all we have left is his little face. Okay, let me add a little shading under his little head. So I'm just going to add a little detail into his tiny ear right there. Okay, and now from here, I'm just going to go in and start on his face. So maybe for this, I'm going to push the camera a little closer. All right, let's do that. Just a little closer. Let me adjust the lighting. There we go. All right, so now we're going to work on his face here. So at this point where I made this little curve happening, okay, I'm going to very lightly, I'm just going to kind of just draw where his nose is going to be without committing. I just want to make the basic shape for now. And then I can see here that there's like a little curve that goes this way, so, but I'm doing it gently. This is like his little mouth, right? He has this little, like a little smile there, and he has a little chubby cheek, like this little round of the chubby cheek there, okay? And then on this side of his nose, there's a slight, like a little curve here. All right, and then one eye is going to be a little higher than the other. So if one eyeball is right here, this other eye is a little higher up here. But again, I'm not committing yet until I make sure I have everything in the right spot. I'm going to make his little eyebrow, like an eyebrow here, one here. Again, he's slanted. He's not looking at us. His head is to the side. And then now I have to fix his head because now his head is a little too round for my liking. So we're just going to go in, and he has like a little cheek here. I'm going to go in and then I can just erase and adjust. Okay, up here. That's not bad, but I'm just going to slim down this little back part of his head and where it's meeting on the neck. So now I'm going to just kind of, I think I'm going to bring his ear down a little at this point. Erase that a little extra. Okay. Oops. Bring his little ear a little lower. And now I'm looking at it. All right, I don't mind it. I'm not hating on this. So I'm just going to go ahead, darken that eye, get rid of any extra line I have there, darken this eye. So notice how one is higher than the other because his head is turned at an angle. Darken his mouth. And that's it for a little bear who's wearing a t-shirt. So let me adjust the lighting again, move back up so we can see the whole assignment. All right, guys, so that's it. So this is part 2, drawing objects from basic forms. So in this one, we made a cylinder, added like a sphere, and then erased as we needed to make this. This started as a rectangular prism that we added a square to and rounded it. And this simply started as a sphere for the head, cylinder for the body, and 4 little cylinders for the arms and legs, and then we adjusted as necessary. So that is part 2. Make sure when you submit your assignment you have both parts completed. I hope this helped, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Have a great one. Bye.